Cool. Well, another episode of the Ice Team podcast. Drew and I are going to sit and talk State of the Union. We've had an interesting ice season. It's funny, I was talking to a couple clients yesterday, and I'm a firm believer that the fish we're targeting, let's call it crappies and bluegills. I'm not talking a 100-year-old sturgeon. Crappies and bluegills. They've never experienced a winter like this. I don't think these crappies and bluegills we're targeting have ever experienced in their lifetime a winter like this, where we've had literally no snow. We've had fast growing ice. I mean, we're at now 14 inches here in the metro. Those trucks starting to drive out. Mm-hmm. I've never heard the ice make noise like you can hear it in the trees. Like there's a bulldozer coming through the forest. It is cracking and popping, and because we just don't have anything to insulate or buffer that, and they don't like anything that's going on. They don't like you. They don't like me. They don't like the wind. They don't like the noise. They don't like the sun. Yesterday it was very evident that the second the sun hit the clouds, we had a chance at catching some fish. Prior to that, it was like sit down in a shack, put down floor mats, do not move, and you'd catch them. It's crazy.
I mean, I think every lake is a little different, but yeah, you're right. How old is a 12-inch crappie?
Here in
at least 5 years old,
probably.
So
you look at the last 5 to 8 years, we haven't seen a winter like this. So they're not used to. They're used to. We always know about the early ice. They're skittish, right? Thin ice, whatever. But they're also excited. You know, their metabolism start to slow down, but they're still trying to kick in.
Yep.
Well, here we are, the second week of January. Still no snow, thick ice, lots of pressure, drastic changes in temperature and wind conditions and all these things. And it is literally nonstop booming out there. It's crazy. And once you get that snow on, even a couple inches, just to insulate it and give you a buffer, it changes everything. Whether it's the light penetration, whether it's the way the lake creates ice, the way the ice forms, all these variables come into play. And I'll tell you what,
So are you telling me your first week of full-time guiding is not going well, Matt?
Oh no, we caught them. I mean, but like, I'm sore.
We gonna go get you a job?
No, I mean, ice cleats. Just talking about ice cleats, right? Like I wear them. I have my clients wear them. I don't want anybody falling.
Yeah,
but
you have to. Safety
it scares a fish within 20 yards when you're walking around with ice cleats. So there's so many things that
I haven't been on the ice as much as you, obviously, but I've been out every weekend for the last 3 weeks, and the first 2 weekends, I would say the fish were skittish. Like when you walk over there, I could see them just scattering the moment you took 2 steps in their direction when they were still 70 feet away. However, last weekend, I went to a lake. It was on Saturday, and it was pretty darn cold, not super windy. The ice was barking all night, right? Like it was in the single digits below zero. And I go to the lake, and there was trucks driving out. There's wheelhouses, whatever. That's like a big basin bite, 20 to 30 feet. And I found a school of crappies, dude, that I was able to drill on top of, and they did not move at all, and they were angry.
Yeah.
Suicidal.
Yep.
And, I'd catch like 2 or 3, and the school would move like 5 feet this way. And I was like, this is amazing.
You said 20 to 30 feet of water?
20 to 30 feet.
Yeah.
But it helps a little bit, but dude, that's not that much. Yeah. This is crystal clear water.
Was it sunny or cloudy?
It was bright as could be.
Yeah.
Man. It was bright bluebird. I'm like, it doesn't make sense, but I'm loving it.
Yeah.
And my theory is that, so this lake, I was fishing an area that like a lot of trucks were driving past. Like there's people ripping by me the whole time.
So they're used to the noise, maybe.
That's what I thought. I'm like, maybe having, let's call it 6 to 8 more inches of ice than early ice, and like 3 days of driving. They're just like, okay,
been there, done that. This is
winter now. Like I think we're just gonna hunker down because we like this spot. And oh god, there's a gold pinhead. I'm gonna eat that thing.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like Lake of the Woods.
And this is a structure lake.
Yeah.
It wasn't a basin.
Yeah.
It was a basin within a lake that has a ton of structure.
Yeah.
So it's not like a flowage or just like a bowl shaped. Like they were just on the drop off of this weed line.
Yeah. Because I think Lake of the Woods, for example, like I know there's guys that firmly believe that there's a lot of fish that utilize the plowed road area. And there's a number of reasons. Obviously, the ice is a little thicker,
that's
right?
A fact.
But
we've talked about that.
The noise, it brings in the noise too. And they think the fish get so used to it that draws them in even at times. And here's the deal. Like the second we think we figured this game out, we haven't. I can tell you that. But what I've seen,
that's them.
Oh yeah,
And they're mean.
That is nice.
And they were a good.
There's your lure.
Crappie.
I'm watching your lure drop down. Do you actually catch one here?
I had to cut clips because I was busy catching one, but yeah, I caught one.
Oh yeah,
and they just didn't move. Like they were there.
I like it.
It was like a dream, And then it limited my fishing to like a half hour.
Yeah,
because I got my 10. I didn't want to be windmilling crappies out at 25, 30 feet.
Yeah,
more than I need to. But
get them for dinner.
I'm like, it's cold out. I'm gonna go home.
Yeah,
like, this was sweet.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we had the first fishing tournament this last week, and I know when we talked a week ago on the podcast, it was coming up, right? And and it was on Pokegama. It's no secret. Anyone that follows social media probably saw it. We had 2 teams get a limit. 2 teams. And we had a lot of teams do very poorly. With all due respect, the conditions were trash.
It's terrible, man.
It was 5-10 degrees below zero. It was blowing 15 miles an hour. But still, I mean, they did well pre-fishing on Saturday. I was out there on Friday, did really well. And these fish just took a 180. And what happened, listening to all these teams, is once again, they couldn't move on them. You couldn't punch a hole and get on them because they were flying. The teams that did well sat in a fish house. They just got to where they know there was some fish and they flipped the trap and they focused. And those are the teams that did the best. And I've noticed that too in the last week is everything we've talked about for years at Ice Team, right, is mobility. Gens is the godfather of all that, right?
Yep.
I'm telling people the last few days, don't move. Find the fish, find these fish, figure out where they are. So you punch your hole, you drop your active target, you spin around like, oh, there's pods all over. Set up and sit. And we've seen 5 times more fish caught than the guy that's trying to hole hop after these fish. It's it's just weird conditions.
Yeah. The lake I was fishing, there was like a community hole with like probably, I don't know, half a dozen ice castles out there, like guys fishing. I was a good 200-300 yards away. And like they were on the deepest spot of it, right? Like it was only maybe 2 or 3 feet deeper than where I was at. And I'm like, maybe the fish have just like heard enough generators and stuff running where like, they're used to the trucks driving, but they just still don't want to be by that noise.
Yeah.
And it like pushed them out. And then me just walking up is not enough to really freak them out,
Sure.
Like I still drove my sled out there and had to find them. So like, don't just assume you're going to go flip a fish house over and they're going to find you.
Right.
Like find where they're moving,
100%.
where they want to be.
Yeah.
So still be active. I mean, I was like drilling holes all over the place before I like found like the school, and it's pretty obvious when you see a school of crappies. They're deep, but
I definitely wouldn't flip the trap if I wasn't seeing fish. No, you got to find the fish, and but the thing of it is I like to find multiple schools. Like if I see one school of fish, it's hard to flip the trap. But if I can like get to an area and let's say I'm looking out 80 to 100 feet, and I can see 2-3 schools kind of surrounding me.
Yeah.
I'm in the vicinity of these fish that are nomadic and just kind of roaming around. I wonder too if those houses you saw, the ice castles, the hard shacks, evening spot too.
Oh yeah,
they're probably just
100%.
camped out there. The fish roam around.
I'm sure a lot of the
time.
fish that I was targeting go there during the evening when the bugs come out of the mud and stuff. But I mean, I don't know. I had a good day fishing on Saturday. Like it was sweet. I got out there. It was wickedly cold. I'm like, I'm gonna do this, and I caught him pretty good and got out of there. I was like, I can't imagine doing that dang fishing tournament tomorrow because I would be frozen, man. Like just like 2 hours of fishing, my bibs were just caked in ice. Like the choke cable's freezing up on the snowmobile. Like all my rods are frozen. I'm like, this is a grind.
Yeah.
Which brings me to my next question. So you see a lot of schoolie rods in the UPL and stuff. I haven't really fished a spinning rod much lately, last like 3-4 years, because I was just Spooler Elite, the straight drop, all that stuff. I realized how poor a regular spinning reel does in the wickedly cold weather.
Oh yeah,
because any water that touches that metal freezes like that, and you literally cannot reel. You can't reel because it gets jammed up. You're chipping ice off it. You can't get your line out because the tiny little speck of ice is holding up your line. Like this sucks. Yeah. So I fished my spinning rod, which was actually great for like actually catching fish. The drag is sweet. But after about an hour of that, I was like, man, I can't even like get my line off here.
Yeah. Freezes into
Grabbed
itself.
my Spooler Elite, caught 2 more. And I was like, there's no ice on here.
No. Spooler Elites are pretty efficient. I mean, there's really nothing to go wrong on them. The only time anybody is like, oh, the reel's not working, 9.9 times out of 10, they have line wrapped up someplace.
Yeah.
Usually you pop that spool off and it was like, oh, look, I didn't even know. Yeah, I must have broke off some line. There's some line stuck in the gears.
Yeah.
Pull that out and the thing works like a dream. I mean, there's really nothing on those that can break unless you do something probably that you shouldn't. I mean, I've had them freeze up, sure, like anything else. And it's my own fault. I set in a slush pile next to me. Yeah. Otherwise, they're bulletproof. And you mentioned the schoolies. That's why a lot of the guys in the tournaments use them.
It's plastic.
They lube up that one little pinion. That's it. And there's nothing that can go wrong on that thing.
No.
You can't really freeze it up. I mean, they're $5. So let's say you do break one or drive over one. So a lot of the guys in the tournaments use those. It's just a way to house your line. But it is a 1-to-1. So like if you're like fishing your bite in 28 feet of water, you are chasing the moon, reeling that thing in, So a lot of guys don't fish them super deep.
Yeah.
Spooler Elite, 2-3-to-1. So when you crank that fish in, you have a lot more line coming back, which is nice. But yeah, I'm with you. I've been living with a Spooler Elite in my hand the last 2 weeks, pretty much nonstop. I had some clients yesterday that wanted to use spinning reels. But they were inside a fish trap.
I feel so much more in control of a fish with the spinning reel when I'm actually fighting it versus the Spooler Elite. Because the Spooler Elite, like your drag is like how it's being pulled out, and like the gears inside there, like it can be chaos when a fish runs on you. Like you're pointing your noodle rod down, you're like, oh my god, like I don't know.
Yeah,
he's still on there. All right, here we go. Whereas a spinning rod, I'm just like, all right, straight butter.
Yeah,
just peel buddy all you want.
Yeah,
like you're coming back.
Yeah, spinning reels. I mean, that's the thing too, is they absolutely have their place still. A lot of people kind of poo-poo them now because of the whole inline, call it militia, right? Everyone talks about inline reels, and they're great. But even if you watch the Chronicles, you watch Bart and Griff and Waldo and Pink and them guys, they're using spinning reels a lot.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
A lot of times, and they're trying to chase a true freak show. But regardless, I mean, I still have spinning reels. With that Magnum crate thing I set up, I have one half with inlines and one half with spinning. Mm-hmm. Because everyone's different. It's one guy take fishing, all he wants to use is a spinning reel. Doesn't want to use inline. The next guy wants to use an inline. The next guy may want to try to use. So you kind of go there with the gamut of things. So how'd you catch your fish last weekend?
Last weekend, the week before, and the week before that, just a gold pinhead. I even pick up waxworms, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I stopped at Quick Trip and I was like, oh, they got waxworms in the little refrigerator. I should probably grab one just in case. I never even opened them.
Yeah.
Like
same.
The basin crappies, God, for the most part, like once they just see a bait in front of their face, they're going to eat it.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just have confidence in the gold pinhead.
Yeah.
And it works.
Yeah.
And I haven't had a crappie turn it down really.
No. They eat it.
I used a chartreuse swirl drop kick with a chartreuse Mackie after my one rod froze up that had my pinhead, and they ate it just fine, no problem. And I'm not targeting bluegills, so like crappies they're notorious for being a little easier to catch than bluegills, I would say.
They choke it.
So yeah, I didn't have to dig in my tackle box, which is great because my hands were so cold. Which like during the UPL, our guys like. I told Sarah on our ride home on Sunday morning, I was like, man, it's like -4 right now and it's kind of windy. I'm like, if I had to tie a knot with like 2-pound mono, I'd be screwed.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what I would do. Flip a house.
That's why they bring like 12 setups rigged up.
Yeah. Like I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. They'll bring like 6 pinhead setups, 6 jig setups, all tied, ready to go. And if they break off, they usually might just even discard that rod. But there were a lot of guys and gals this weekend, like I said, that definitely brought a fish house. Like I saw more fish houses.
I saw that
behind machines than I've seen in years.
I would drag a one man, like a Kenai, with a heater, just for tying lines or sorting fish or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, and they do that. That's what they do. They get in there, or even as a bait. Like a lot of these guys have figured out the bite on Saturday or Friday or the weekend before, whatever. Right? They've kind of figured out what they want to do. They have a game plan. So a lot of times they'll go to a spot and they might not leave that spot for a couple hours. And what I see a lot of them do this last weekend is they set up the fish trap, they get a heater going, and they may not even be in it, but they'll resort to going into it every once in a while to warm their hands up, maybe tie a knot, keep their fish. They put their fish in there so they're not freezing up. So those are things for sure. But yeah, it's
did people fish the cribs and stuff over there?
The locals are on them.
Locals are on.
Yeah, so I mean, like you look at, the thing about a lake like Pokegama is it gets enough pressure from locals and public that you bring a group of people like the UPL to that lake, they have to think outside the box. There's no way around it. Even the spot that we fished out there a couple weeks ago had 15 people on it before the UPL takeoff even started. You know, there's 8 hard shacks on it already, a couple guys in a hub, a couple guys on machines, like just guys out there having fun. Well, now you rip out there thinking that's going to be your go-to spot because you checked it on Friday and there was no one there. Well, now here it is on a Sunday. You're like, I can't even chase a school around on this spot. There's houses everywhere. Yeah. So there's so many dynamics to that to where they had to get creative. I honestly don't even know where the winning teams fished. I do know that McCoy and Eric, a team that got second, said they found a boulder. And they told us that in our recap. They found a big boulder. It was pretty good size, kind of happenstance pre-fishing, and they camped on it. They said it just kept reloading and resetting the whole day. They just camped on top of a boulder, and they're like, it was just kind of like, oh, what is that?
Point of interest for
and
crappie.
They sat there and they said that's what they got second place. One of the only 2 teams to get a limit.
I was on a lake this fall in the boat, and I found there'd be 3 boulders up on a flat. The flat was only 6 feet deep. And I'm bass fishing, trying to catch smallmouth, and every one of those boulders I went to had a big crappie on it.
I believe it.
Yeah. And this is a deep lake too. And I was like, really? You guys are up here?
Yeah. Well, we talked to that guy. I don't remember. We were at Shields that day, remember?
Oh,
and he was telling us, and he was talking about really big fish and, kind of talking about the chronicles and how their mythology of how they go and attack a lake. And he's like, yeah, I got on some of the biggest crappies ever, 14, 15, 16 inchers, like giants. And he said they were on a couple rocks.
Yeah, I caught them
just
on
isolated on a couple isolated rocks. And he's like, they were just sitting there. So I think that's something that we don't think about enough probably for panfish is rock.
Yeah.
Obviously in the walleye world,
never think about it.
We live and die by fishing rocks and rock piles, right? The walleyes love them. In the summertime, our smallmouth, largemouth. I think in the wintertime too. I mean, I look at some of my better spots in the metro, take the basin out of the equation. The basin bite doesn't exist. Pretend it doesn't exist. My better spots in the metro are going to be the same spots I flip for largemouth. Hard bottom spots in the weeds. And usually there's gravel or rock there with it.
Yep.
And that's where your biggest fish is. And that's something that holds true in the wintertime too, is a lot of if I go through my waypoints on Minnetonka that I like to flip, and I'm talking 8 to 15 feet of water. I'm not talking 2, 3, 4 feet of water, 8 to 15 feet. A lot of times that's in the milfoil. There's hard bottom there. If I rifle through a bunch of those on a specific bay, more often than not, I will find panfish on one of them, even in the dead of winter, in 8, 9, 10, 12 feet of water, relating to that same structure because there's still weeds there. Usually there's forage, there's a number of things that they like. And oftentimes, like I said, there's some kind of hard bottom there, rock, gravel, whatever.
Yeah, well, it's just transition. I mean, when you get all those things mixed together, there's bound to be fish.
Yeah,
and then you get a big rock like the size of this table, and there's probably going to be a fish, taking cover nearby.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like that's what the crappies I saw were doing back in the boat.
Yeah.
At least, why wouldn't they tuck up against the side of it and ambush a minnow?
Absolutely.
I feel like when crappies get that big too, they kind of act like bass at times, they're not a small little panfish, trying to avoid pike.
No.
You get a 12, 13, 14 inch crappie, that's a good size fish. Yeah. Their mouths are as big as, your 1.5 pound bass.
Yeah. They're eating, they're apex of their category for sure.
Yeah. It's a different breed.
And you mentioned the pinhead. I mean, the pinhead, we don't even probably need to talk about the pinhead pro ever again, and it'll sell just fine. But, one thing I noticed too with that, and I was talking to somebody last week during these conditions, is oftentimes when the bite gets quote unquote tough, right? I've found that deploying a pinhead, like an aggressive tactic, gets me more fish. And we were doing that yesterday. We had a bite window yesterday where the sun came out, nothing wanted to eat. We were marking more fish than I've marked the entire week. I mean, every single hole. If I drop the forward facing sonar and spin, I'm like, is every fish in the lake right here? And they would not eat anything. And the only way we can entice these fish to bite was to literally pound a pinhead to get some of these reaction bites out of these fish. And I say that because we're quick to always go finesse, downsize, the bite's negative, get out the spring bobber rods, get out the 3 mil tungsten and the finesse plastics. And I've seen the opposite in at least the metro lakes, where when the bite gets really tough, I grab a 32nd ounce or even a 16th ounce pinhead and I get after them. And I really get that rhythm going, that cadence to kind of get that fish to react to something. even if it doesn't want to eat. And I'm talking crappies. Like a lot of times you'll get them and you can see them on your electronics where they start to get real antsy and the signal starts to quiver a lot. And then if you can start getting them up and down the water column, you're gonna catch that fish.
Yeah. Yeah. The ones I was catching, they were so suicidal, man. Like,
Yeah.
you just had to, like, I was fishing in down mode with my live scope, and you could almost like pick out which one you wanted to catch and like try to quick skirt the pinhead past like the small ones flying up.
Yeah.
It's pretty wild.
You get the up bite, slack
Oh
line.
yeah. I'm like, I wasn't using a noodle rod, spring bobber, nothing on my pinhead rod. And I was just like, okay, well, the line isn't sinking anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm, 4 to 6 feet off the bottom. Like, I know what's happening here.
Yeah. Do you keep the little snap on? You take yours off?
On the pinhead?
Yeah.
I just keep it on.
Yeah. I always take mine off.
Why?
I just like how it snaps better and it doesn't follow hook as much.
Oh,
like
yeah.
I never, ever, ever, ever follow hook my pinhead. And I think it's because I take that snap off.
In general, as an ice fisherman and probably even open water fisherman, I try not to overthink those small things, which probably is not a good thing at times, but I just would rather get my bait in front of fish.
Yeah.
I'd just rather spend 90% of my time finding the fish and deploying any bait in front of them.
Sure.
Than spending 90% of my time fine tuning my setups and my rods and reels and snaps and stuff.
Yeah.
So
I just had way better. I've always, when I keep that snap on, I always find, like even yesterday, my client was getting frustrated because he kept hooking his line. And I'm like, take the snap off. He's like, well, why? Why would I take the snap off? It comes with the snap. Take the snap, never follow hook the rest of the day. And so if you put it in front of a fish's face, you're 100% right. I think it would eat it the same way. But from an efficiency standpoint, like I've had it to where like oh man, there's a school, I bombed down there. I'm like, oh, this does not feel right. Oh man, I hooked my line. Game over on this. I got to reel up, and then the school kind of skirts past me again.
The only time I would ever hook my snap is if I like fought a fish, got it out of the hole, whatever, unhooked it and like laid my rod down and my rod just shakes on the ice or something.
Yeah.
And I pick up to put it back in. I'm like, oh, it's wrapped around the line. I just like shake it quick and it typically opens up.
Yeah.
And then I bomb it back down.
Yeah.
Which that happened to me a couple times for sure.
Pinhead is a dominant presentation. And it catches fish. It's efficient. It's fast. And you mentioned something like 5 minutes ago that I think is worth chatting about too. When it's cold out, you can fish it with gloves on.
Oh, yeah.
You don't need to finesse it. You're not trying to, you can literally just throw your gloves on and pound that pinhead. And I end up using a noodle rod in that situation, so I have a little more of a strike indication, and I'll just get after it. And I like the katana rod for that because it's got a little larger guide train. So like in the last week when it's been 5 degrees outside and things want to freeze up, that larger guide train's been nice because it doesn't get as frozen. I can pop it free easier, and I can just go. I put some 3-pound frost ice line on there, and it's the perfect bait for cold weather fishing, hole hopping, because even if that hole that you just cut kind of starts to skim over, that 16th ounce pin, it'll just plummet right through it. Yeah, I'm not looking to try to finesse anything at this point, and it works. It's a very versatile.
No, I got weak hands, man. That's why I'm like, I'd have to have a flip over in the UPL. So I always fish with gloves on. Actually, mitts.
My hands are about toast already, cracking and bleeding, and it's just
too. When I'm fishing the pinhead, I'm like tucking my rod like almost into my gut a little bit, just to be super. Like I don't want any movement other than just like barely moving my wrists, watching that rod tip shake. Yeah, and I don't use a noodle rod much for pinhead, because I want to like really hammer it when I need to, and I feel like the noodle rod can kind of make it do a little wave. Yeah, and like I want that blade to be flapping if I need it to.
That's what they key in on.
Yeah. So typically like on my my tungsten, I'll fish a noodle rod a lot just because it's fun, and I'm typically fishing smaller jigs. I feel like I can still bounce it. Yeah. So everyone's got their own flavor though for rods.
So here's a challenge for you and me. What are we at? 25 minutes in? Yeah. We cannot mention the word pinhead the rest of the podcast. Oof. Let's see if we can.
Questionable. Should we just end it?
Let's see if we can. No, it's funny because Drew and I were talking off camera right before this podcast, and honestly, I've been turning to plastics a lot this last week too. I've been fishing a lot of tungsten jigs and Niku plastics, whether it's a bolt minnow, soldier fly. I actually really love that bait. I know Griff, that's his baby, and I'll be honest, when I first saw the soldier, I was lukewarm on it. I'll be honest. Like, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, it didn't seem like something I'd probably fish a lot. And but like Griff, like, he knows more about these fish And by the way, it's Griff's birthday today. It's the 9th today when we're filming this. So I don't know what's coming out, but it is Adam Griffith's birthday. Happy birthday, Griff. That bait's awesome. And that bait's awesome for many reasons. It fishes and glides and acts big and acts small, if that makes sense. It looks really good on your locator. Shows up phenomenal because it's got that flat spot.
Yep.
You can really get it to swim. You can pound it in front of a weary fish's face, or you can snap it and get almost like a mini Tika minnow feel to it because it'll snap up and kind of swim and glide back down.
Sure.
It's something I think if you haven't played around with it, I would. And the thing with plastics, and maybe our listeners are going, I don't have a lot of success with plastics. And when you're not catching fish, it's not when you tie one on. To me, when you want to build confidence with something, you fish it when everything else is, when the fish are pounding, right? Because then you know that the fish will eat that too. So if you are using your aforementioned lure that we can't say anymore, and you're pounding them with it, that's a good chance to go, hey, well, why don't I try plastics when the bite's good? Because then mentally you go, hey, this works just the same. Now, if you're not catching anything at all on your go-to presentations, all of your confidence baits, probably not the best time to try something you've never used. Now, you can play with color and size, but I always tell people, don't try plastics for the first time when you're on a really, really, really tough bite that nothing's working on. So if your jig and maggot didn't work, probably don't need to tie a plastic on right away.
If you had to tie on let's call it the smallest drop kick with a bolt minnow, or fish a fully loaded spoon with 6 maggots on it, I would say on a tough bite, the little bolt minnow might catch them better than the spoon. I feel like it's how you fish the plastic too. I've seen people who they'll T-bone a crappie tube or something versus slide it on the shaft of the hook. And I'm like, what are you doing?
I think horizontal's a big one.
Yeah. Have it rigged properly. I got a lot of confidence in plastics, and obviously, we use them and we fished them and have caught a ton of fish on them. But I mean, in very few situations do I see having maybe having one maggot on a dropper treble on a night bite that's super finicky with
we've done that
spring bobber. I'm sometimes you have to do that.
we did that a few years ago, remember?
Yeah,
it was painful.
Not a chance they were gonna eat a plastic. But in general, man, I feel 9 times out of 10 you should be able to get them to eat a plastic if you got the right color and presentation.
You're right. I've noticed that in the last week.
It's easier to go wrong fishing a plastic.
100%.
A maggot, just slap it on a hook and you're probably going to be in good shape.
Yeah. But a lot of times I've seen with the maggots, I have fished maggots the last week. I've had clients put them on their jigs. The size of the fish they catch is drastically different. And I say that because they're picking up smaller fish, these little ones that come in, and you almost create a little bit of a frenzy between the nursery. You don't get the bigger ones to commit. Where when we've wanted to catch bluegills this last week, we've tied on a number 12 drop kick and a bolt minnow, and we've gone to town. But you are right. You need to thread it on straight. And I think they also like that horizontal presentation. Bluegills like to come in at a bait and investigate it. They like to almost cross-eye look at it. Where a crappie's just moving, looks good, eat, right?
Palm up.
Where the bluegill kind of comes in and investigates it. And that's where we've turned to plastics to get these fish to bite. And then it has been, if I feel like we're on top of a decent bluegill bite and they're not eating the spoon, and they will, you'll get fish to eat the spoon. Don't get me wrong too. We've caught plenty of bluegills on 32nd ounce spoons. But if I'm going bluegill fishing, I tend to grab noodle rod or spring bobber rod, horizontal bait, and get after it. It's funny, the guy I took out, one of the guys I took out yesterday, he got so far into the weeds in a cool way that he makes his own horizontal jigs. He lives in the world of fly fishing. Very good fly fisherman. He's been all over the world. And he takes a 90-degree bend hook, so a horizontal hook, just like you would probably have in a drop kick, right? And he wraps his own tungsten onto this hook, paints them himself. So it's a very thin profile, weighted hook, right? And then he was taking motor oil Mackeys and dissecting them in ways to thread them on, almost looking like a type of insect. And that thing almost had... It was the most natural thing I've ever seen. And we were on such a tough bite, I couldn't get him to eat the drop kick in a bolt minnow. I would say 1 out of 10 fish would actually bite it. he was getting like 4 out of 10 fish to eat this insect blobby contraption. And I say that because here's someone's just like, I'm going to throw something that looks extremely natural. I'm going to get in their face. I'm going to get horizontal. It looked exactly like probably something they would want, like Scott Brower, for example.
Yeah,
we've all seen the pictures that he posts of insects and stuff he tries to imitate with why he came out with the Mackie line. This guy studies Scott Brower because, like, if you looked at what was on his line, it looked like some kind of vertebrae in the water, and he was catching fish. He was doing it.
It's weird. Sometimes fish, there is just something about a specific bait or action that just makes them tick on a given day. You know what I mean? I remember it was when I just started getting into ice fishing. One of the guys that was actually teaching me a lot of stuff. We were out towards Buffalo, and we were catching bluegills, and I wasn't catching much. I didn't really know what I was doing either. But I'm like using a jig or something, you know, with like some spikes on it. Mm-hmm. And he was using what was that jig that it would sit vertical, almost like a little tiny little demon jig, but it had 2 little blades on top, and you would tie your line between the blades.
Oh, so the flutterbug.
Maybe that's
Maynard's flutterbug, yeah.
And he was just pounding them on that bait. And he was using like braided line, you know, like 4 or 6 pound, like all the way down to the bait. And I'm like, really? Like I thought you had to use like clear line, like, you know, fluoro or mono. And he was just going to town on it.
Yeah.
And he's like, try one of these baits. And I put one on. I still wasn't catching anything. And he's like, dude, you got to make the wings flap.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it's a mechanical jig. Yeah.
I'm like really? He goes, just keep pounding that thing. And sure as heck, I started pounding it and I started catching fish.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who'd have thought? Like just that little difference in the cadence, which made those wings flap, turned the bluegills on that day.
Yeah.
Like they were that picky.
Yeah. It's a Maynard's flutterbug, and JB Lures makes one too. And I remember that because like when I used to work at Thorn Brothers, we'd sell them in bulk bins, and Pat Smith turned me on to that. It's a little horizontal or vertical teardrop, little blob, 2 little silver flappers. Yeah, type in Maynard's flutterbug. I bet you that's what you're looking at. That thing's money. I've caught a lot of fish on that over the years.
Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
I think the one I was using might have been a little flatter, not as much of like a
I think
teardrop.
JB Lures makes one that's very similar to that flutterbug as well, if I remember right.
JB Lures, if they're still around. Yeah, they're around. The spin drop.
No, that one's got a spinning blade, but there's one it's similar. It's like the fairy jig or something like that.
Yeah. Well, you know what I'm talking about,
yeah.
That action. And that's what we were catching them on. And I don't know, it kind of opened my eyes a little bit to like how finicky you actually have to be. And I think fishing at night on some of the tougher bites that we've done, those are nights where like I am rifling through everything in my tackle box. Like it makes you like just always keep trying a new bait, like when they're not biting. Bluegills or nighttime finicky crappies. It's funny. I texted Brett McComas the other day because I watched his nighttime crappie video. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, he caught nice ones.
Yeah, and he was like, yeah, it's pretty wild. Like once the sun goes down, you hit a wall where like these fish just go very, very kind of dormant, and like you can shake a ton of stuff in front of them, and sometimes they just don't want it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, I have seen that so many times where you after that quick flash of a primetime bite, they just go lockjaw.
Yeah.
And then you're like dangling one maggot or a crappie minnow. You're
it's like you and me.
through different colors, and I'm like, this makes no sense.
At one point, you get done eating. Like they just ate, right? Their dinner time is that sundown bite. And then it's like maybe throughout the evening, you and I would eat a snack or a morsel, right? Maybe a couple hours down the road. So they just got done eating. And now they want to relax. They want to now sit on the couch, leave me alone.
Remember
and
last
I'm not
year,
eating a burger anymore.
When we did that the first time, I think or it might have been 2 years ago. I was like, dude, they're going to eat a half ant because they like that or that vertical presentation for some reason, and one spike. Like I was just here last weekend. That's what they ate. I went through my whole tackle box. That's what it's going to be. And you were like pounding a pinhead. You're like, dude, they're gonna eat this thing, man. Like, I've been catching fish on these things all the time. I'm like, whatever, do your thing. Like, here's a half ant when you need it.
Yeah, I caught a pile of them
until it got dark, and then they weren't touching that thing.
Yeah,
and then they just wanted I'd sit my straight drop rod down there at the spring bobber because you can sit it on its butt. It just sits there, and all of a sudden you'd see the spring bobber just go donk.
That was fun. That was a super fun night.
It's like when I texted McComas, I was like, dude, that like reminds me of how ice fishing like should be and how I learned, like it's social. You're sitting with people.
Yeah.
When I was with my buddies a couple weeks ago, we were running and gunning all day. It's like we didn't even have time to talk.
Yeah.
You just get so locked into running and chasing that.
You're not wrong. Guess what I put on the hook yesterday?
We
were fishing. Like, what do you? I mean, I used a crappie minnow.
No way, really?
Yeah, I didn't catch anything on it. I mean, it was late. It was the afternoon when we just couldn't get anything to bite. And I'm like, we're seeing enough fish.
Put your little bobber on
Dude,
there
we
too,
were seeing fish. Dead sticked it. We were seeing fish come through nonstop, and they were the right ones. Like if you looked at them on forward facing center, they weren't the nursery. I mean, these were the right ones. I mean, they were all over. I'm like, these fish were, and I was out there the day before, and they were committing suicide all day long. Yesterday, they didn't want to touch anything, so I'm like, well, let's just throw in a crappie minnow. I took a confetti drop, which is our new jig, with an XL hook, and I put the tiniest little crappie minnow on that thing. 2-pound line, feather that thing right down, a few feet out the bottom, right where the heart of these schools of fish were coming through at. Nothing. And I watched that rod tip just get worked by that minnow. So I know, and I can see fish. I'm like, there's 10 fish around this minnow right now. Yeah. Any self-respected crappie should eat this minnow. That thing sat there for 25 minutes and didn't get a bump.
Jeez.
It was that kind of day. And we were talking about this to start. We needed this clouds to come out. And about 2:30, the clouds came out and the bite went bonkers. It wasn't prime time. So if it was like 3:30, 3:45, I would have been like, okay, was it the clouds or was it the angle? This is prime time. No, this was like 2:30. The clouds came out and the fish just went bonkers.
It's funny. I was just thinking this morning, I was like, man, I've had to fish in kind of some crummy weather this year. And how you're thinking is you're on the ice every day. Like you're picking up on the clouds, right? I'm in the position now where I'm just like, if I get 5 hours to go fishing on Saturday, I'm going no matter what.
You should.
And I don't care what the clouds are doing. I don't care how, we got to have safe ice, obviously, but like if there's no snow cover, like I'm going no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And you just kind of don't think about those smaller, elements.
How many times have we proved all that wrong?
Well, and then I was like,
I proved so much of this wrong over the years.
Why how come the school that I was on Saturday, like didn't move? Like, I don't really know. They really should have been moving.
And every other lake, they didn't want anything to do with you.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know. It's just, sometimes you just fall into a good one. I don't know.
And I've always said this, like, people always ask me in conversations, whether it's in the boat or on the ice, on trips, how much do you care about moon phases and this and this and this and this? And
no matter what, man.
I've proven some of that wrong. Like when you look at the In Fisherman magazine, which I love to read, and they have that calendar of like the best days to fish, and here's the different things. I have caught fish on the worst days very well. Yeah. And on the days that it said it's supposed to be lights out, throw anything you want, you're going to catch them. I've proven so much of that wrong that I think you nailed it. Like you just go fishing. I think we oftentimes overthink fishing. I think sometimes it's a lot easier than we think. And I say that very cautiously because I get whooped on the ice. Right. But like, I do believe that. Like, you and I have talked bass fishing for hours, right? That you walk down a row of bass plastics and every brand's got their little nuance and different color scheme and different color flake and different swirl and all this. A lot of times fish relate to something light or something dark. They don't always know what exact, I mean, watermelon red flake, green pumpkin, like I would be confident a lot of times taking either one of those and throwing it at the fish I want to target and feel good about catching one, right? Now there is times in certain bodies of water, clear bodies of water, where they're eating on specific forage. Mm-hmm. Totally understand that. But as a general rule of thumb, like I like something light, I like something dark, and I bring out something white. That's generally speaking what I have in my arsenal. And glow in the wintertime plays a role. I haven't seen glow play as big a role this year, and I think that's because it can't be that dark down there. Not like a normal year.
Not during the day.
So I think I haven't even charged a jig. Dead serious. I haven't even charged one jig with a UV light this entire ice fishing season. Not one time.
No, I haven't been fishing at night yet. Yeah. I should do that.
Yeah.
I think the guys who are, like, obviously you're professional bass fishermen, your upper end ice fishermen in tournaments, like they know the small little details. Like I don't know what goes through Adam Griffith's head, but like he knows a certain time of day when they're going to bite this color based on this situation, what you saw. Like I'm like, that's right over my head.
Yeah.
You know, like bass fishing, like guys will put in like certain type of hair in their jigs and do like a streak of this because they saw a bait fish that looked like this. And I'm probably thinking, I don't know, is there a green pumpkin? You know,
that one looks good. I'll use that one.
They are better at fishing. Like there is no doubt because they are so dialed into everything. And I feel like they pick up not just the bait, but the situations. Like they'll pick up on, okay, the wind just shifted.
Yeah.
I need to go from the rocks to the weeds because for some reason that's why they're biting.
Yeah.
Where I would just still be like, I'm just going to keep flipping the grass and whatever, or keep working the rocks. Like I don't care.
Well, it's like Larry Hansen told us in that podcast. He talked about the wind and how it changes things in the lake depending on the direction of the wind. And it all makes either Larry's so good at talking that we believe him or it's true, right? Like, and I think it's true because the guy spent so much time on the water. You know, that's one thing I noticed yesterday too, that was our big differentiator between the day before and yesterday. The wind did a 180. We had a north-northwest wind 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And we had a south-southwest wind yesterday.
Warm weather.
And I don't know if that changed fish behavior because I made the comment to the guys I was with yesterday. I kind of wish the fish were gone because I'd feel a little better. Oh, they moved. Because we weren't catching anything. And I'm like, they moved. No, they were there. They didn't move. They were still there. They just, something turned them off.
Yeah.
And the only variable that I could see, because it was sunny 2 days ago as well, just like yesterday. It wasn't like 2 days ago it was cloudy. The wind direction, for some reason, could have played a role. I'm not sure. But otherwise, I don't know. You know,
it was for sure, man. They can feel that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, fish, like we feel the temperature and we feel the wind. They feel the pressure. You know, they feel the moon gravity pull, and like it's beyond what we some people understand.
Yeah.
I don't have time to understand. I'm just going to go fish and see what happens.
Yeah. And that's what we did yesterday. I just said, we're going to grind it. I cut so many holes yesterday.
Remember, a couple of years ago on Leech when it was just fishing kind of sucked. It was that one where we had like late ice, a lot of snow, and we had an east wind that day. I remember. And John Crane from up there, he was like, east wind, can't fish Leech. I'm like, what? He goes, yep, east wind, never good. I'm like, okay, Crane.
Yeah.
And now here we are. I'm like, yeah, he's probably right.
Yeah.
Because it changes things up and fish just can't, it takes them a couple of days to adapt, get settled in.
Yeah, it was funny because I chased some fish on a lake like a week ago, trying to get a couple big ones. And I was texting Adam Griffith. Yeah, man, I kind of got my teeth kicked in on Lake X, Y, Z, whatever. And he's like, well, yeah, I wouldn't have gone out to any of those lakes today.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm like, why? He goes, they don't like these conditions. I'm like, what conditions? He's like, oh, I would have told you last night, don't bother. You're not going to get them.
They don't like when you have free time.
I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, he's like, they don't like these. No. The conditions aren't right for those big ones to chew. I'm like, dude.
Griff told me that they only bite when you're at work. I'm just kidding. He didn't say that.
Probably.
Well, they said, I remember last year when Adam, he's like, dude, the fish could feel when you stepped out of your truck. He's like, you could drill a hole or whatever. And then like, if you're sitting in your truck and your truck is running, they don't move. The moment they hear your footsteps, they move.
Yeah.
I was like, I actually believe it now.
Yeah,
at first I was like, you're crazy. But now I'm like, I see it because I watch fish feel footsteps and move.
Yeah. I've had times where I'm kneeling down in the ice working fish and I just reposition my body a little bit and it might make a little bit of noise on the ice and they're gone.
Yeah.
Like cleats aside, like they don't want anything different sometimes, you know? Yeah, it's
I wonder
crazy.
What a fish thinks when the ice is just barking and screaming all night.
Well, it's not like they have to get used to it.
They have to.
Like
but
that's
still,
what
that'd be like just a solid ringing in their lateral line or whatever they sense with, like holy smokes.
I checked the lake out a few days ago, super shallow. Everything was 5 to 8 feet of water. And the ice was making so much noise. Like I could not get 2 fish out of a hole to save my life. Like you'd catch a fish and that school wanted nothing to do with you. And the only way I could get these fish to bite is I had to stay. Like I couldn't chase fish. I couldn't punch 10 holes and hole hop and move and find them, right? I had to just like kneel down on the ice, look at a blank markham for 5 minutes for one to come through. Otherwise, you were not catching these fish. And I should have taken a play out of the locals playbook. Everybody around me, and there was probably 7, 8 people out there, every one of them was hunkered down in the fish trap. Every one of them. I was the only guy fishing open ice. The only one. I was the only one punching holes and doing our thing and moving around, right? I pull out there with the snow dog. I punch a hole. I drop the active target. I'm like, okay, there's little clusters of fish around me. I could not get them to bite. I punched 8, 10 holes, and I started moving, dropping down, nothing here, dropping, until I just sat down and knelt by a hole and did absolutely nothing. And then after a few minutes, they'd graze right underneath you.
Yeah.
And you'd get some to bite. It's just the weirdest thing.
Think about if you're smallmouth fishing in their boat and you're in like 1-2 foot waves, like just the sound of the waves slapping your boat.
Mm-hmm.
A fish feels it. They have to know you're there.
Oh, yeah.
So they say like long casts. You hear like Leech Lake early season walleye, like get your jig out as far away from the boat as you can.
Yeah.
Because you're in like, less than 10 feet of water. It's fairly clear lake.
Like you should go under the ice sometime, Drew, and look up and see what you can see.
Well, dude, I just watched the, it was that video that Linder Media and the Minnesota DNR put out about the barotrauma stuff. They put an underwater drone down, and the day after they caught all these crappies from deeper water, they put the drone down and looked. It might have been the same day, whatever. They looked up, and you could see like everything. There was some snow in that. You could see like a floating crappie, and they said they would go over to it until they can see the shadow, I believe, of the person walking, and they'd like X the spot from up top. Like, oh yeah, there's crappie number 1. We're gonna put an X here so we don't like recount it. Like you can see all
and you
that
could
stuff.
see the person walking.
I was actually,
I believe you. 100%.
Truthfully, I was like listening to it more than I was watching it.
Yeah, I believe you.
I think that's what they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I look at it right now. Like if I walk, I can see down. Like when I'm fighting a fish,
you can see 10 feet that
I can see the fish swimming around.
Yeah, the gold
so they
thing.
definitely can. They may not be able to be like, hey,
and
look,
you're going to be
Drew,
silhouetted more than they are.
Yeah, he's wearing green pants, but they're going to be like, there's something up there.
Black blob, yeah, space. There's aliens, dude.
Yeah, and every time that thing moves, like something weird happens. Like I hear a noise and what the heck's going on, and yeah, there's definitely the fish are definitely more weary this year than I've experienced in a long time. So, give me a few inches of snow, and I heard rumors we might see a little snow tonight.
I think we might get an inch between now
dusting.
and like the end of the weekend.
Yeah, I think I saw maybe a little bit on Saturday,
that'll
Sunday.
blow off the lakes, man.
It's not going to do much.
No,
I mean, I want the snow for honestly efficiency on the ice too. Like get the cleats off our feet, move around a little more. If you're going to cut a hole, you're not slipping. You can bank your fish house. Like a little bit of snow. I mean, I don't want a foot. Don't get me wrong, but give me like 2-3 inches of snow, and game on. I think you're going to see all these things we talked about become a distant past.
I mean, we got good ice now.
We do.
I wouldn't say drive anywhere, obviously,
right.
but like people are driving when they're using common sense. So it's not like we are sitting on 6 inches of ice like last year or whatever.
Right.
And that's throughout most of the state, I would say. I mean, I was up towards the Mille Lacs area last weekend, and there was, oh God, there had to be over a foot of ice. I mean, there's trucks and ice castles out. So
I'm finding 12 to 15 on most of our metro lakes now.
Yeah.
And I have seen some 11-inch stuff, but if you look at where that is on the lake, it makes sense. There's some type of spring current or maybe a neck down or something where you just know. And there's certain spots on some lakes you just know. But I'd say as a general rule of thumb, where ice is good and is usually good, we're finding 12 to 15.
Yeah.
And when this comes out, there might be more because it was 9 degrees again this morning when I woke up, and there's no snow on the ice. We're at optimal ice condition making weather, right? So it's happening.
The last week you see like on Facebook trucks going through or like falling halfway through. Every single one that I've seen a picture of, I'm like, dude, what were you doing, man?
Yeah.
Don't cross the crack.
Yeah.
That's like wet, that's not a good idea. Don't drive through the pencil reeds with an ice castle. Like that's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Don't park by each other like
on 10 inches of ice.
Yeah, why the parking lot on land works just fine, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, you're right. Everything I've seen on social media too seems like I'm not, glad no one's hurt, right? No one's getting hurt with these things, but everyone I've seen so far, unless I've missed something, they've done something they shouldn't. It's not a fluke random. I just driving out. It was like you drove over a pressure ridge, clear as day, and you put your front end in. Like you shouldn't do that in the heart of the ice season when we have 2 feet of ice. And I've seen things like that where it's like just use a little bit of common sense.
When
and ice fishing is extremely safe.
2 weekends ago, me and my buddies were out fishing. There was probably 10, I'd say around 10 inches of ice. Like it wasn't a foot. And we're packing up to go for the day. And I'm loading my snowmobile onto the trailer, and dude drives out in an F-150, just blazes by us onto the ice. And I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? Like doesn't get out, doesn't check, doesn't have a float suit on. Like it's like he just went for a casual drive. Yeah. And then he goes like 100, 150 yards out, and he just like turns around and comes back and leaves. And I'm like, what is the purpose of that?
Yeah.
Like
maybe you realized, I shouldn't be out here.
But he didn't even get out of the truck.
Yeah.
I was like, you could have asked. I would have told you, like, you probably shouldn't drive, or I could have told you how much ice there is, or like where people are fishing. Like, I don't understand what you got out of that.
I had a guy the other day on a lake. I was fishing, and Polaris Ranger, side by side, dragging a 15-foot size ice castle out, dragging it out to the spot. Drives it out there, parks it over a basin bite, rips back. It's the last I see of the guy on the ice. Well, I'm packing up that afternoon, and minivan comes pulling up to me. Hey, buddy, how's it going? You catch anything out there? I'm like, yeah, we did this, and kind of giving him a little tips. And he's like, I don't know if you saw me, but that was me out there pulling. That was my Ranger. I got a truck like yours here, a big one, but I didn't want to drive out there. But I'll take this minivan out there, because if I sink this, I don't really care. Old timer, just poor minivan. He's like, I'm going to send it with the minivan, but I'm not taking my pickup truck. So he takes his Polaris Ranger, drags his fish house out there. Minivan doesn't have a hitch, so he can't use it to drag. Goes back, gets his minivan, and drives out. And I've seen him twice now in the last few days on this same lake. And he's just driving around a minivan. Yeah.
Well, at least he took his Ranger first and checked the ice.
And he did. And that's like, to your point. Like he was like, I'm not going to hook up to my F-150 and drive this fish house out. No, he took the Ranger out there. He did his due diligence. He checked the ice, realized, you know what? There's 13, 14 inches of ice. My minivan's probably fine. It's a smaller vehicle, right?
Yeah.
And he used that. And I did see other vehicles on this body of water, smaller SUVs, smaller pickup trucks, cars, right? And I think you're going to see a lot change in the next week. And the next week, you're going to see full-size trucks all over the Twin Cities.
Absolutely, diesels.
But even then, do your due diligence and check, just because you see somebody out there. And the thing I always tell people too is, when you see somebody out there with a pickup truck, it doesn't mean the whole lake is fair game to drive your pickup truck, right? There's certain areas of lakes that just don't set up right. Maybe they were open longer or whatever. So a lot of times I don't ever venture off the beaten path without checking. It's just how I've always been.
I always try to err on the side of caution. So let's say I do have let's say there's 12 to 14 inches of ice, and I have the ability to take my Tahoe out or Sarah's car. Like right now, you could take a car on the ice.
Anywhere you want.
I'm probably going to try to, take her car. Like I don't need much. Like I'm not bringing a house, like I'd rather take her car than take my Tahoe. Yeah. Like why?
I'm seeing a lot of cars on the ice this year, and it's because there's no snow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm seeing tons of cars just driving around out there, and cars are half the weight of a F-150, right? Or your Tahoe. So
I think that's one of the reasons why you are seeing some people go through on the cracks. Like, so a typical year on Mille Lacs, you'll have a plowed road, and you probably don't want to venture off that road for obvious reasons. There might be a snowbank. It could be just unmarked, whatever. This year, it's like, okay, there's a bridge out there. Like, get to the bridge, and then you're over the crack, and then it's like fair game. Then people might have a little too much freedom right now, where they're just like bombing.
Go wherever you want.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, that bridge we have to get over, that's like a mile down that way. I think we can just make it over here, and we'll save some time, and then blunk.
Yeah, because once we get snow, there's beat down trails, community spots, right, on every lake you go to, and everybody tends to stay on those trails. Well, even when you plow a road, and you know this, the ice gets thicker on the plowed road. Yeah. So the thickest ice on Lake of the Woods right now is probably underneath Adrian's Road. Yeah, that's the thickest ice. It's going to grow faster. I mean, this is especially when you get a lot of snow. Yeah, there's less insulation. I mean, if you look, you'll see that there's inches more ice on the plowed road. So a lot of people stay on that trail, and they don't venture off. Yeah, you're probably spot on. Right now, there's no trail. You'll just go from point A to point B and drive straight across to your fishing spot.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now, ripping around on the Snow Dog, there's random substantial cracks all over.
Oh,
we just never see them usually because there's snow on them.
There's drift
Correct.
on them. Yeah,
there's
you never
substantial cracks that I'm driving over with the Snow Dog. And I'm like, I would not drive my truck over this.
No.
Not a chance. And even though there's 14 inches of ice, I wouldn't drive it over this. Snow Dog, I'm not worried. But like, you big bump, you come up and, well, once you get a few inches of snow, we don't see those things.
Yeah. Basically, just use common sense and go slow.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason to be buzzing around at, 20, 30 miles an hour at the wheelhouse, like just take your time.
Yeah. So people are starting to drive trucks out. I would encourage you, if that's something you want to do, check first, ask around, see if there's a local bait shop or something and say, hey, is anybody driving on some of these lakes? They usually have a pretty good, especially around the metro, whether it's Chisago area, call Frankie's.
Yeah.
Call Thorn Brothers. Call a local bait shop. Is anyone driving out there yet? Do those kind of things. As you get further north, like towards Mille Lacs and stuff, it's becoming more normal now of driving out. Yep. We're getting to that point of the season. But again, call a resort. If you go to Mille Lacs, pay the $10 for a road pass. That's just me. It's a peace of mind. They are on top. This is what they do, right? They're going to give you that peace of mind to go, hey, it's $10. And if anything was to happen, that's what they're there for. They're there to help you. So look at that. I'm ripping up the Lake of the Woods tomorrow for 4 days. I'm pumped. They're letting trucks drive out there, obviously. Yeah. I'm going to go to Saugerville, USA, try to get a big walleye, take the kiddos, have some fun, get some content. So I'm going to get a chance to go fish Lake of the Woods for a few days. I'm actually super pumped. I don't think I'll even bring an auger. We're going to get some shacks from John Paul Tessier, JP, and I might just roll up there with some
what you're wearing right
now. I know.
Now.
I'm kind of excited, like snacks and hanging out and putting your feet
weather,
up.
Is it going to be? It's be nicer next week? Isn't it?
Supposed to be nice. I did see some below zero stuff to start next week, though. Again,
I mean, you can expect that in January.
But I do think it's going to be
good
decent.
driving conditions up there.
I just want good driving conditions.
You're leaving tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be fine.
I just don't want any snow tomorrow. Because every year I feel like we go to Lake of the Woods, we add 2 hours to our drive because there's some type of blizzard.
Yeah.
And that's the worst drive to take. Once you get to like Walker to the border, they're not plowing, they're not salting. It's in the white knuckle, and I hate it. And I think, knock on wood, we're in good shape.
I think you should be good.
We're in good shape. So we're going to go up there. We're going to chase down some fish. I'm going to put some rattling PTs to work. I got Tika minnows rigged up. I got my favorite lure on Lake of the Woods. One of my favorite lures is a drop double XL. It's not even a spoon or a Tika minnow. And those work great, but I just love fishing that. It's considered a really big panfish jig, but I would consider it your kind of all-purpose walleye jig too. And I go catch a pile of fish on that drop double XL. So I'm excited to get up there and see what bites.
For the caliber of fish you're mostly going to catch too, it's perfect.
Yeah. Well, our biggest bite the last 5 years has come on that lure. It's come on a drop double XL jig and a live minnow versus a minnow head and a spoon. And it's crazy. It's like, for some reason, that bait, and talking with JP, it made me feel good. Last year we were up there doing a thing with Midwest Outdoors, and I had the whole family, and I'm fishing a red glow gold rattling PT spoon. Mm-hmm. Pretty cliche. Catch fish on Lake of the Woods lure, right?
Yep.
Minnow head, and I'm catching fish. And I got either a parrot or a glow white double XL jig on a dead stick. And we're kind of doing that combo as a team. Mm-hmm. Well, JP walks in, who's legendary. JP's Lake of the Woods outdoorsman, right? One of the best walleye fishermen on Lake of the Woods ever. He comes, oh, what up, Matty? He comes in, starts chatting and this and that. What are you using? And I reel up, and he looks at me and he goes, dude. And he just walks out of the fish house. I'm like, what the heck? Goes to his little vehicle, comes walking back in with his own rods, the exact same thing on two of his rods. And I'm like, all right, we're on to something. JP goes, I am fishing the exact color, the exact weight of both of those that you're using right now. And I'm like, heck yeah. And he's just like, and he kind of looks around like people are don't tell everybody that. I'm like, oh my dude, God. This is...
Dude, so that is one of those lakes where it's funny. You see, you watch so many videos, you talk to so many people, and it's like some people are having the greatest day of fishing in their life, depending where they're at, and some people had the worst weekend. Yeah. It's like you pattern some things out for sure, like the drop double XL or having a gold, some type of rattling spoon or like pink glow.
Yep.
But it's just like you do need to be in the right spot, and crazy things can happen on Lake of the Woods.
I've seen, I
moved 100 yards and it fires up.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just like wild.
We did a whole destinations episode a month or so ago, and I said Lake of the Woods is my favorite, and I think it's because of the memories I've made up there.
Yeah.
And we've never had a really bad day, and I say that meaning like by bad day it's a numbers thing, right? Like we've had days where we don't catch a walleye over 20 inches. Sorry, we have. But we still catch 20 or 30 other fish. And it might be a 16-inch walleye and a bunch of saugers and the rogue eel pout that comes through here and there, and people get excited. But you go up there and you just make memories. And that's what I'm excited about the next few days. I got Jack going with 3 of his high school buddies in one fish house.
Oh, nice.
That should be a gong show.
Yep.
And then we're going to be positioned nearby with Brody and Benny doing some fishing as well. So we're going to make some more memories, cook some food, have a good time, and just kind of get out of Dodge for a few days.
Tara and Callie going?
Nope, Tara and Callie are doing a girls' weekend.
Oh.
They're actually super excited. They got everything planned out. They're going to hang out with some friends. Like they got probably as much fun planned as we do.
Yeah.
And then we're just ripping up with the dudes.
The boys.
Yeah, just the boys. And this will be Jack's first time kind of doing his own thing with his buddies from high school. They're all juniors, some seniors, and pretty exciting for them. That's like, those are big moments in life, right?
Yeah, in high school.
So he's excited, and we're going to rip up there, have some fun. But I'll post some stuff on social media. I'll do some stuff on Matt Johnson Outdoors. So if you want to get a handle on what's working for us, and who knows, maybe we don't catch anything, but we're going to go out there and have.
You're not staying on the ice, right?
We're staying on the ice all weekend. We are sleeping on the ice.
So you guys got to get some supplies and stuff.
Yep, I got a list on my phone so long that I'm putting together tonight when I get home. Sleeping bags, pillows, totes, toiletries.
How many days are you? How many nights?
3 nights.
Okay, here's one thing that I always think about when I'm going ice camping is when you're going up to a Lake of the Woods or a Red on let's call it a Friday morning, and you're staying till Sunday. By Sunday, I'm like, man, I need to take a shower.
Yeah, my shower will happen on Monday night when I get back to the cities.
So you need a lot of body. Jack's house is reek like
oh
Axe
my
body
god,
spray.
dude! I'm gonna shower as late as I can tonight, and we're leaving at 5:30 tomorrow morning, and then we'll probably get home dinner time on Monday.
Yeah,
and it'll be Oh my I'm lucky because I have the 8th grader and 6th grader with me.
Yes,
not quite stinky yet.
Yeah, the high school.
Jack's got himself, captain offensive lineman Mason Brent.
Holy
going
smokes.
with. Yeah, he's got Aaron, his buddy that is his same age that runs track. He's got Dustin, who's I believe a hockey player. Like, oh, dude, that right. I may not visit their house after Saturday night.
No,
there's a good chance that I won't.
JP, we need a 5-gallon bucket of warm water and a bar soap. These guys are.
No, but it's fun. I'm excited. It's something I've been looking forward to for a while. We're gonna rip up there, have a few days, and then back on the Metro Ice next week. Is kind of the plan. But cool. I don't know, man. Well, hopefully you have a good weekend.
This weekend, Saturday and maybe Sunday morning. Just a quick half-day rippers somewhere.
Yeah, and I think the weather here around here looks beautiful. 20s, and we haven't had that.
Yeah.
Last night, it was funny. Corey Studer and I were talking last night on my way home from my guide trip. I think we fished till dark. How nice it was from like 3 to 5.
Mm-hmm.
It was about 20 degrees. The clouds the sun went behind the clouds. The wind completely died off. It was beautiful outside.
Yeah.
And it was cold at 1 o'clock because there was still that wind, high suns. And then all of a sudden from like 3 to 5, it was like the gloves are off.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing some hole hopping. The fish turned on. It was a nice day. We just realized how acclimated our bodies are starting to get that, it's nice out when it's like 15 to 20. And now when it gets to be mid to upper 20s this weekend, it's going to feel like a heat wave.
Yeah. I feel like the first couple times out in the cold each year, I'm not dressed quite properly. Like I forget my system that worked for me at the end of last year, you know, and now I got that dialed. The proper base layers, socks, boots.
Yeah. And mentally you just know.
Yeah.
You just kind of get into a groove where you're like, it's probably going to be cold, but I'm ready for it. Yeah. You don't think about it as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, this weekend's going to be nice. Just debating if I want to go crappie fishing or actually try to catch a walleye this year through the ice.
Go catch a walleye.
I know.
I think it's a walleye weekend for both of us.
We just do like a sun up walleye thing and then go catch a crappie.
I would do that. I would do that. Give that a shot. But no, hopefully everyone has fun this weekend, gets out, chases some fish. It's the middle of January.
Mm-hmm.
We got great ice conditions. It's not like the last couple of years. If you like to ice fish anywhere in the Midwest or the ice belt, we're pretty lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
it's go time.
We were saying that this is the when did we have great ice? 3 years ago?
It's been a few years. Yeah.
It's been terrible.
And now if we get some snow, let's say in a week or so, we're going to be at 16 inches of ice around here. Let the snow fly.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be like the seasons we've always wanted.
Yeah.
So
I just really want to rip the snowmobile around too.
You will. It's coming. Man. It's coming.
I hope so.
Well, good deal, man. Well, there you go. Another episode of the Ice Team podcast. We're going to get out there this weekend, chase down some fish. And the next time we chat, we'll let you know if
Lake of the Woods report.
We did anything. So
yeah,
we'll be safe. Everyone else be safe and set some hooks.
Awesome.